All right, very warm welcome to the first session of this year called as Software of the Mind, Understanding the Role of the Hofstede's Cultural Dimensions. Uh, Geert Hofstede, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, one of the world's foremost culture researchers, observed that while societies worldwide grappled with similar fundamental questions, their answers varied very, very greatly. This unique response shaped the culture fabric of our society, often delineated by the geographical boundaries. And in today's session, that's exactly what we are going to explore through the six cultural dimensions from Hofstede's groundbreaking six cultural dimensions. You will gain insights into how the cultural dynamics influence our interactions, decision making, collaboration as we work in multicultural teams. We are also going to be sharing the culture in the workplace assessment. By bridging these cultural gaps, individuals can reduce conflicts, enhance influencing skills, build stronger connections, and we will also learn how we can use all this information that we are gathering today in our coaching conversations. And to take us through this session, we have with us today Lakshmi. Lakshmi, if you can just wave your hand, an
Right.
engineer by profession and a people enthusiast at heart, Lakshmi Narasimhan embodies a rare blend of technical expertise and human centric leadership. Toastmasters has helped him master the art of confident communications, enabling him to face the world outside, while his spiritual journey has led him to explore the depths within. As the chief of staff of the vice president of the Intel's data center and AI group, Lakshmi serves as a trusted advisor, driving critical business decisions, implementing strategic initiatives, and championing culture transformations across the organization. Over 2 decades at Intel, he has held diverse roles spanning management, customer enablement, and consulting across domains like personal computing, IoT, cloud computing, high performance computing, AI collaboration, AI, and he did all of this while collaborating with the teams worldwide. Uh, and hence he is here to talk to us about how do we make this work as we are working in multicultural organizations. His passion for mentorship extends beyond Intel. He has guided numerous startups through Intel's startup program and has facilitated leadership and soft skills interventions for over a decade. Armed with a bachelor's degree in computer science, a master's in psychology, and an executive MBA from INSEAD, and currently pursuing a doctorate at ISB, Lakshmi brings a rich blend of academic rigor and practical wisdom. He is a certified ICF certified leadership coach, Hofstede certified cross cultural coach. He thrives on supporting others in their growth journey outside of work. His love for Indian Carnatic music keeps him grounded. He learns and plays the Carnatic flute. We won't be able to hear that today, but someday, Lakshmi noted, showcasing his unwavering commitment to lifelong learning. With that, over to you, Lakshmi. Looking forward to a fantabulous session.
Thank you. Thanks, Shanti. Let me just share my screen and then let me get started. Okay. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Very good evening to everybody and a happy new year. And thanks, Shanti, for giving this opportunity to be the first speaker for the year 2025. So with that wishes, I wanted to start off this session. So I was always very curious about why people behave the way they behave, and coaching to a great extent gave me some insights into why people behave the way they behave, and my psychology degree took it to the next level, but I still felt that there was some gap, and then this whole understanding of culture, I felt it addressed that gap wonderfully. Now, with this, I can claim 0.1% mastery over why people behave the way they behave. Still, only God knows why 99% of the time how people behave, why they behave the way they behave, right? So, it is still a mystery. And a lot of times, a lot of the research is all about that, right? So, with this today, I'm here to talk about the software of the mind. That's why I say, hey, the way the people behave, it is fundamentally they are who they are. And this layer, that's why we call the software, right? Those in the IT industry, you would probably know there is a hardware and there is a software that runs on top of the hardware. So the understanding of the culture, and that's like the software of the mind. That's how Hofstede, Professor Hofstede puts it, who is one of the leading researchers of culture. With that, this is the rough agenda I have. Just to break the ice, I just have a small culture quiz, and then I will introduce you to Hofstede's the cultural model, what it is, and then we'll get into the six dimensions of Hofstede's culture in workplace, and then we will do a short 10 to 15 minute kind of breakouts with some of the scenarios, and then we'll talk about the dashboards, some of the dashboards that can be useful for you in your own organizations or the clients that you work with, right? So that is the plan. Eventually, what is it that I want to leave you all with is that as coaches, a lot of times our own understanding of culture comes in our way of coaching clients, helping clients, and also one is understanding others' cultures. And a lot of times, when I did I just sent out a survey for as a pre-work, and then what I understand is that a lot of people are talking about their own culture and some of the things that is kind of inhibiting them to be the best versions of best coaches themselves, right? So this is what we have roughly we have today. So with this, let me just jump into a quick culture quiz. I'll start with a very easy one. Okay, handing things over with the left hand not allowed. I'm just going to list down three countries, and you can type the answers in the chat window. Shanti, if you can just help me with the answers, responses, that would be great. This is a very easy one, I know.
India, 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 India.
Okay. All right. Any other responses?
Throughout India and sea. Yeah. Okay, Japan
Ash.
starts to flow in now.
Yeah. So Japan also does not, meaning they don't hand over things in the left hand. Of course, India, all of you really know that, right? So this is, and US, it is pretty okay. So the next one is around calling a supervisor by first name. Allowed? Again, same list of countries. Which
US,
countries?
US, 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 US.
Yeah, it's a pretty standard to be called the superiors or the managers by their first name. Very common. I've been working for an American company. When somebody comes and we say sir, they are like, okay, wondering what is it, right? So
Yeah, we also have a couple of India.
okay, cool. Oh, yeah. If you're working for MNCs, yeah, that's pretty normal. Okay, this is the last one. Asking personal questions in an interview. In which countries is
USA
it not
and
allowed?
one or two Japans are also there, but predominantly US.
Not allowed. Yes, you're right. So US, it is not allowed. In Asian culture, it is pretty okay to ask questions about. Again, it all depends as a company how you set your rules, but the culture really does not stop you from asking any personal questions. Okay, with this, let me just jump into the Hofstede's culture model. So the trigger for me to get into this whole culture study was that I was this was back in 2019 when I was invited as part of Intel's coaches conference. There were 30 or 40 odd coaches coming from different countries across the globe. And then during the training program, it was like a conference, coaching conference. And then there was a facilitator talking to us about a particular topic. And then I made a comment. I made a comment about women in general, which I was very familiar. I mean, I don't want to make the comment and get into trouble again. So that comment kind of put me into trouble, and everybody started cornering me after that particular training session and then asked me, how can you make that comment? Maybe it is unique to your culture, that is absolutely fine, but there is no way that you can generalize this, right? And one person after the other coming to me, I'm like, okay, I think I should do something about it. And that is when I started exploring, hey, how do I learn culture? And this was one way. Professor Hofstede, he is no more, and his son is now taken over some of the research work that he has done. So as Shanti very wonderfully explained what he feels, all societies, the same thing that Shanti read out during the introduction, right? So culture is a collective programming of the mind that distinguishes the members of one group or category of people from others, right? He beautifully said that because especially in India, we have a culture every, I don't even know, right? 100 kilometers, you have a different culture. That is how diverse we are, right? So he has studied culture for last 70 years, and the data, some of the data that you will see is spanning that many number of years. So with this, what does this model contain? It is a framework just like any other assessment. It is a framework to understand cultural differences, and the dimensions help us measure the relative differences between. So when we get into the dimensions, you will really see how you can measure these differences, and how do you really attribute certain things to certain behavior aspects to some of the dimensions, right? And then for each of these dimensions, there is just like a positive, negative. There is nothing positive or negative about in these dimensions, just like any other assessment. There are two opposing extremes where this is how each of the cultures are, right? There's nothing right or wrong about it. That is how they are. So we will get into each of these dimensions, and we will talk about some of these orientations in greater detail. Okay, so now we will get into the 6 dimensions of CWQ, or we call it the Culture and Workplace Questionnaire, right? So the first one is individualism. We call it individualism, the degree to which decisions are made for the benefits of the individual or for the benefit of the group. So if, let's say, there are some decisions being made, is it for my own benefit or is it for the benefit of the larger larger group, right? So that's where there is individual orientation and group orientation. So the scores are towards the 100. You see that these are countries which are more individual oriented, and to the right, you see to a great extent a lot of the Asian cultures, you will see that are more group oriented. So there was one coachee of mine who moved from US, who relocated from US to Japan. So from right to the left. And she brought this challenge to me. I was a coach assigned to her. And then she brought up this challenge to me. Hey, it's 4 months since I relocated to Japan, and I'm in my team meetings. And every time there is a particular request to volunteer, I put up my hand, and I just tell what I wanted to say, and my boss listens to it. My boss, who is Japanese, listens to it, and then just walks out and just does what he wants to do. So this was a scenario that was thrown at me, and this was one of the first challenges she had brought to me. At that time, I was not really exposed to Hofstede's dimensions to a great extent. And then I started exploring that bit by bit. And then she said, hey, she had a aha moment, right? Uh, when we jointly discovered that by just asking for permission, that she just asked permission to her boss, hey, no, I have an idea for the collective good of everybody. Would you be okay if I bring forward that idea? And that did the magic. That just that one statement. So previously she was just putting down the ideas just like that. Now she just seek permission and then said that, hey, no, it is for the collective good, it is just not for me, right? So that did all the magic. So that is how understanding small nuances between the cultures can do wonders for individuals, right? So in nutshell, this is individualism.
Yeah,
And then,
before you proceed, Lakshmi, there are a couple
yeah,
of folks who are not able to see the screen. Um,
okay.
are there many who are not able to? Do you want to unshare and reshare just to inform?
Should
No,
I?
okay. So let me tell my problem, so that if anybody else who is not able to share. So there are on the top there are two tabs: meeting and Lakshmi Narayan. So Lakshmi Narasimhan. So click on the other ones. Then I think it for me it worked like that.
Okay,
Meeting. Okay.
And your name. There are two tabs. Maybe for not for you, for others, I think there are two
Okay.
tabs at the top.
I see.
lovely. Thank you. You can continue, Lakshmi. Thank you so much.
Okay. All others are able to see it, right? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Cool. All right. So now, how do we really deal with, let's say, the extremes? How are they being perceived? right? So those who are socialized with an individual orientation may be perceived as loners, being selfish, egocentric, self-centered, disloyal, argumentative. So this is how, let's say somebody is in the US, the ones which you saw to the towards the 100, US, UK, you will see that this is how you would perceive them as. So when you're working with these cultures, what do you really do? How do you really get things done? Focus on the task, and then provide direct individual feedback and emphasize on individual skills rather than group affiliation, right? And those who are socialized with group orientation, like the cultures of India and the Asians predominantly, typically timid, focused on relationship than tasks, and they feel that, hey, I think these people are just wasting time, right? Inefficient, unqualified. This is how the people in the West probably perceive people in the East. And then when speaking with someone socialized in group orientation, what do if they do it this way? Feedback indirectly and expect people to consult each other, and then add social niceties to develop relationships. So for us, everything is like a family. So when you start with something related to family, something personal, and then you get on to work, there is an immediate connect that happens with the people, with a lot of the Asians. And then offer support and if appropriate training. It's not that everybody knows it all. With the constant support and appreciation and training appropriation, this can be overcome. So in actual, this is individualism. So if there are any questions, feel free to put it in the chat window. We will take it as we kind of come to a logical point where I can take the questions. Okay, so the next is power distance. Power distance, this is nothing but the degree to which inequality or distance between those in charge and the less powerful is accepted. And the more hierarchically oriented the country is, it is towards the 100. If it is more participative, it's towards the 0. The scores are from 0. That's how it is from 0 to 100. So now this is something that happened to me 3 months back, where I was having a lunch conversation with a set of Japanese delegates. uh, I do pick a lot of Japanese examples because I have worked with them very closely, and a lot of my examples also, I was like a lot of the moments, a lot of these incidents were like aha for me, right? Aha moments. So we were at the lunch table, and then there were a set of VPs, and there were people like me who were supporting the VPs who were all seated. All the customers were seated on the other side, and then we were all seated on the other side. And then at one point, the person who was moderating the meeting said, "Hey, no, Lakshmi-san, can you please get up and sit at this particular location and not at this particular seat and not where you're seated?" I was like, I didn't really understand why he meant so. Then I was, of course, with that, now I had this new knowledge of Hofstede. Then I figured out that the person who was sitting opposite to me was a vice president, and he wanted vice president on our side to be sitting exactly opposite, right? So that is why he was advising me to move, and then having my vice president come and sit just opposite to that particular seat, right? So that is how hierarchical they are. Let's say, especially those who work for MNCs, you know that if you worked for American companies, they really don't care about who reports to who, and then all that they want is just the job to get done, right? Whereas in Japan, it is, and China, in Asian countries too. I wouldn't generalize it for all Asian countries. To a great extent, there is hierarchical orientation, and especially when I was talking about the previous example of the person relocating from US to Japan. So this person also said that, hey, when I am in the meeting, I'm surprised that nobody even talks in the meeting when the manager talks. So that was really new to me. I'm not very used to that, but only after the boss speaks, everyone else in the meeting really opens up, right? So these are things as you find out, and then the way you kind of understand how the culture works, then you tweak your style to make it work. So how are people on either sides perceived? Hierarchical orientation might be perceived as micromanagers, distrustful, controlling, And how do you deal with them? So exactly, this is ask permission to suggest alternatives. If you look at what the individual did, to a great extent, it is a mixture of individualism and hierarchical orientation, where asking permission to suggest alternatives and recognize their status. The example that I just said, hey, if the person is a vice president, making sure that you acknowledge them with their titles formally, and so that they are happy about it, and then keep them informed. No surprises, right? As long as they just have to be informed, and then making sure that they have no surprises. So those who socialize with the participative orientation might be perceived as insubordinate, disloyal, or troublemakers. So in general, when speaking with someone socialized with a participative orientation, solicit their ideas and opinions, and then expect them to come to you with ideas and issues, right? So typically, if they come to you with ideas, it is more welcome than you just telling, hey, just go do it, right? And then welcome their initiative. So generally, this is how you overcome some of these challenges with respect to power districts. So the next one is very interesting for to me, especially. This is uh, when I work with some of the European countries. It is very it's very tricky. The extent to which members of a culture feel threatened by uncertain, ambiguous, or predictable situations. Right here, everything the towards 100, towards to my left, Japan, South Korea, Germany, for them everything has to be either 0 or a 1. They cannot take any amount of ambiguity. If for example, I if for those who work in the IT industry, this would be very familiar. So there was an incident where one of our product release, it had to go through some last minute change, and the program manager or the project manager was sitting in Germany. When we had recommended that, hey, no, can you just intercept this for this release? It was a complete no, and we had to go with the release without this particular capability or the feature, right? So they don't want any uncertainty, they don't want any ambiguity. It's either 0 or 1 for them. So when we work with them, we have to be very careful about it and make sure that we articulate things in a manner that they would really be able to comprehend, and the risk to be comprehended, and then they execute it, right? So for those countries to the right, you see that nothing ventured, nothing gained. What is different is curious. We can, I think, in one of the feedback also, that somebody has said, hey, you give us anything, we will just make it work, right? We have famously in India, we call it the jugaad, right? We don't care really, hey, what is there, what is not there. You give us the problem statement, we somehow or the other we will make it work. So that is to the right, and to the left you see that, hey, I want everything in black and white. So that is how cultures differ. So those who socialized with need for certainty, how are they perceived by let's say the other side? They are resistant to change, they are withholding information, very rigid, narrow minded. So this is how they are perceived. And how do you really work with some of them? Acknowledge the rules and structures. If they say that, one of the scenarios I have, will also talk about this in a little bit detail. So process and rules, they exist. Acknowledge that, and your understanding of those rules, right? And they really value the opinion of the experts. So it is always good to refer to experts and then consult and make sure that you use that to influence their decisions. And they want everything step by step, right? There's nothing, no shortcuts. And I think in the feedback also I got, hey, we always look for shortcuts. That is not something that people to the left expect, right? And ask questions, clarifying questions. So those who are socialized with tolerance for ambiguity, they are like perceived as unconcerned, or they are not really willing to work hard, very negligent, especially when it comes to, let's say, rules and processes. They don't really care. So that is how they are really perceived. And when speaking to someone, for those who, when they speak to somebody like Indians and the Eastern cultures, explain why the rules are important. Then otherwise you're not going to follow that. Let them discuss with you where it is acceptable to widen the parameters. Yeah, before you need to really articulate why it is important. Otherwise, you're not going to really stick to what you're just going to just the boundaries are very important. Otherwise, they will just go explore whichever way they want, right? So that is why it is very, very important that you place those boundaries in place. Okay, Shanti, any questions? Do we have any questions before I move further?
There was just a comment, Lakshmi, that
Sure.
paradoxical, it seems to me, individualistic and participative orientation. For I think for the US, that's what had occurred to me, that US are individualistic but participative in orientation. They seem to be contradicting each other. That was just an observation made.
Yeah. Okay, that is a good point. So if you look at it, um, when it comes to the orientation, if you look at these two, right? Power distance, individualism is more about the decision making. Is it for the benefit of individual or is it for the group's benefit, right? But when it comes to power distance, we talk about it is about equality. Hey, is equality is inequality accepted in the society or not accepted, right? If you look at the participative oriented societies, inequalities among people should be minimized. All should have similar rights, right? That is the participative orientation. That is why you say that these countries are actually more, meaning they believe in equality, right? Whereas to the left, you see that, hey, it is accepted that let's say, as I think when we started the meeting, when I had the quiz, right? So where we are talking about addressing by names, addressing by sir, we are naturally inclined to saying, hey, when you work for an Indian company or a professor, the natural tendency is to call them, address them by sir and whatever. It is an indication of a hierarchical orientation, right? Whereas the participative orientation, it is about the they don't appreciate this whole division, right? Everybody is equal. That is why all the labor laws that you see, everything is pretty much surrounding that. I hope that addressed the question.
Yeah, and we have a very similar observation by Sayog. Interestingly, when it comes to jobs, Indians prefer government jobs, basically security over
Mhm.
private, though they like uncertainty over certainty. Any comments here?
Yeah, that is also a very interesting observation. When it comes to, I think it boils down to the fact that the family orientation is very, very strong, meaning the group orientation is very, very, very strong. And also, we call the India in some of the next slides, you will see that, it is, we call the India as a country as a family model, right? So what happens there is the bread and butter comes from the head of the family, and financial security becomes a big question there, right? That is why you will see that they prefer a secure job when it comes to when it comes to work and job related things. That's a very good observation. This is just my perspective. I know there are people who are probably much more experienced, and feel free to chime in.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks. So the next one is we call it the achievement orientation. So the degree to which we focus on goal achievement and or work or quality of life. So hey, I don't goal achievement as priority over quality of life, assertiveness, competitiveness, ambition. So all these are virtues of achievement orientation, and then quality of life. You will see that, hey, I don't really care about work. For me, the quality of life that I live is important. When it comes to vacations, for me, the vacation is more important than work. And you will see that we will just log through the year end to make sure things are in place. Whereas you will see some of the countries to the right, you will see that hey, if it is a vacation, it is a vacation, right? Full stop. So that is how you will see that how they prioritize life. And especially when it comes to, I also have a similar scenario for this, where when it comes to they clearly prioritize their non-work related things when it comes to the quality of life, right? So that is what achievement orientation is all about. And of course, how do each side gets perceived? Those who are more achievement oriented, extremely competitive, argumentative, prideful, boastful, all these words apply to those who are socialized with achievement orientation. And then when you are talking to somebody socialized, like let's say somebody in Netherlands having a conversation with Indians, it should be like, hey, having intellectual discussion. Do not see it as a conflict, right? How do you really take it to more about, hey, challenging take the exact competency and challenge on those, rather than just talking about, hey, oh, I have a vacation, I need to go cycling, I need to go do this, right? When you have conversations with Indians, this is one of the way that you do it. Not that, again, there's nothing like, Indians don't take vacation and all that. Things are evolving. It is just a relative score, right? And acknowledging their accomplishment and decisive and being decisive and assertive, right? So these are ways when someone is socialized with achievement orientation, it could really help. And those who are socialized with the quality of life orientation, they may be perceived as lacking in ambition. They are too humble and not really showing, not willing to show what they want, what they have done, what they can accomplish, and afraid of conflict, right? This is how they may be perceived as. But here, when speaking with someone in that culture, focus on, of course, win-win, meaning how can you, of course, you have, let's say, you have something to be done in this particular timeline, but what are other compromises that you can do so that it's a win-win solution? And then commitment to achieving. So it's not that they are not really committed to success. Everybody is committed to success, but the way we get to success is just different, right? So that is how you deal with somebody who is kind of socialized in this particular dimension. Okay, this is time orientation, the extent to which members of a society were prepared to adapt themselves to reach a desirable future, long term versus short term. So here, so there was I was arranging a conference. This is way back 3-4 years back, or maybe this was way even before 2019 time frame. When I was arranging a conference, I had invited one of the leaders from the Toyota factory that is close to Bangalore. And then when he started off with the slides for the keynote, he put together a slide that talked about a 2050 vision, right? And we were talking, as we were sitting and observing some of these, we were like wondering, we are finding it difficult to put together a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year roadmap, and they are talking about a 50-year roadmap, right? So that is how long-term oriented, to a great extent, companies like Hyundai, Toyota, you will see that they have that longer-term vision, and they value relationships so much. And you will see this also very, very common in countries to the right. Let's say American companies, you will see that layoffs are pretty very, very common. You just pick the news article from the morning, you will see that, hey, this company laid off, that company laid off, right? It's very rare that those companies which value long-term the relationships, it's very rare that you find some of those aspects, right? Again, this is nothing about right or wrong. It is just about how they are, right? Yeah, certain people value that long-term relationship. Certain people value that, hey, for me, this short-term outcome is more important. It is just how they are. So those who socialize with long term, too thrifty. Again, this is exactly the same comment someone has written in the feedback form that was filled. They feel like, hey, we are too thrifty, use resource very sparingly, and then unconcerned about current profits. They don't care about, hey, what happens to the finances of the organization, etc. And too focused on potential rather than actual this thing. It's very unrealistic, right? So that's how it feels, or they're perceived as. Whereas those who are socialized with short-term orientation, they feel they are perceived like wasteful, interested in more short-term. Hey, I want results now. I don't really care about the long term. Unconcerned about customization. They have a standard template. They just want to utilize the same thing for everybody. Unconcerned about every individual customer, right? So again, these are overall traits. Again, there may be individual instances where when you work with customers, you work with people in other cultures, there will definitely be some trade-offs. Again, this is the average or the median, if you were to call, right? So this is about the time orientation.
Lakshmi,
And then,
there are some
yeah,
questions. You want to take it?
sure, please. Okay, go ahead.
On the achievement orientation, Yatish comments, surprised to see US and other parts of Europe omitted from the right from the list on the right.
Okay, so I have just put those countries which are in the extreme conditions, right? So there is a book that I will just show you. It has got the scores for pretty much every single country. You can actually go through that. And if I'm right, US scores somewhere This is achievement orientation. So US scores somewhere in the range 60 to 70, right? If I'm right. I'll just reconfirm that, but yeah, they are somewhere in the 60, 70 range.
So
So
you
I've
have
just
been
picked the
screening
top.
only the extremes, is what you're saying, right?
Yes. Yeah, the tops. I've just picked the top ones. And also, I do customize this based on some of the inputs that I get. If, let's say, somebody has worked with, well, if based on the survey results that I get, I also customize it to the countries that people have worked with, right? So this is not the complete list. The complete list is like around 70 to 80 countries list. The research is has taken into account close to 70, 80 countries. Right, so this is just the extremes,
Yeah,
and
and
also kind of relatability to the particular audience.
sure. And Brian comments, does achievement orientation explain work calls happening throughout the day, even when not in office? Uh, I would want to say yes, but I will let you say that.
Yes, you are right to some extent, Brian. Yeah, you will see that those who are achievement oriented, they will just work like crazy. They don't really care about what time of the what time the calls are. Of course, it does explain to a great extent. Very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, Priya says, where does India fit? I think it's on the next component where we do not see India. Where would India sit here?
So India is somewhere to the long term orientation. It is definitely not to the left, but the scores are probably slightly lower than the ones that you see from Japan, Italy, South Korea. Right? It is slightly. If I'm right, the scores are somewhere in the range of 60 to 70 somewhere. I can just reconfirm that.
Sure. And one last one, any thoughts on mini cultures within one organization? Manoj, if you want to clarify what that means, I'm not sure I read it in the right way it should be read.
Um, yeah, I can. Yeah, Manoj, if you want to clarify, you can clarify. If not, I can just.
Yes, please go ahead. If Manoj doesn't find the answer, I'm sure he'll come back.
Yeah, the mini culture to a great extent, especially we say that the leader of the organization is capable of building his or her own culture, right? To a great extent, the leader or the manager of the organization, the employees below see how their managers behave, and then how that itself create a culture of its own, right? Irrespective of which, there will be traits. If let's say the manager is Indian, you will see some of these Indian traits in that manager, and it will be natural for the others who are reporting to this manager follow that. Or of course, if they are, they may have disagreements if they do not really agree with that, and that's where a lot of the conflicts come, right? If they don't really agree with the, like, let's say if you saw the before slide on micromanagement and all that, probably a lot of Indian managers, if you feel they let's say they are being perceived as micromanagers, there are many people who may not like a micromanager. So that is when these kind of conflicts arise, right? So to the mini cultures are created to a great extent from the manager or the leader's behavior, and that will kind of create the culture for the team. I hope that answers your question, Manoj. Okay. All right. So let me get to the last one. So this is indulgence orientation. So indulgence is all about don't worry, be happy. Restraint is all about remove restraints, what will become of virtue. So essentially, it is about let's say a particular problem is given. A lot of times, this is a feedback that we constantly get when we work with global teams, right? Hey, when a problem is given to Indian teams, invariably they will make it work. They will really they are the ones, because of their high uncertainty quotient. You just give any problem, they will just crack it. But the challenge is for them to agree and then move on, right? There is a lot of ifs and buts, there are a lot of questions that are thrown. There are more challenges that would be thrown, rather than saying, hey, I think I know the problem, I will just go make it happen, right? That is more cultural, and you will see that in a lot of the Asian countries, and to a great extent it is also driven by the economics of the countries as well, right? So it is about uh, a greater positive and a happy attitude versus not so happy attitude. Again, we cannot generalize this. This is based on the research of the wider population. And of course, if you look at individuals, it may completely differ from individual to individual, but this is more of a national average, if I would say, right? So this is how it would be perceived as, right? The cultures who are on the indulgent side, overly optimistic, lacking seriousness, too enthusiastic, lacking self-control. So these are some of the things that is how the indulgent societies are being perceived. And those with restraint, pessimistic, unwilling to have fun, guarded by rules and regulations. So I cannot come out because of XYZ reasons. There are a lot of rules and boundaries that we have for ourselves, because of which we're constrained by that rather than just having going by our free will, right? So that is how that is what indulgence stands for, right? So these are six dimensions that was defined by Hofstede. Again, this is a research that was built over many years, and of course, to a great extent. Now, what we will do now is we will have small mini stories or scenarios that we have. What we will do is we will have a breakout, and then there are some questions associated to that particular scenario. When you come back, it would be good if you're able to discuss those scenarios and then come back. And Shanti, I know how we have like 57, so let's see if we can just have six breakouts, and then we can put the instructions in the chat window if it is okay.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions before we break out, Shanti, as you're preparing for the breakout?
No questions.
Okay, thank you.
People, I'm going to add all the case studies here in the text chat. If you're in room 1, please pick up case study 1. If you're in room 2, please pick up case study 2, so on and so forth. Give me 1 second as I first upload the case studies and then open the breakout rooms.
So in the meantime, if any of you have any questions, I can take if the country scores. Okay, I think there is a particular question. Okay, curious if the country scores, Arvind is asking if the country scores and the dimensions have moved over the years. This is a very, very good question, Arvind. So the country scores, meaning as the education and the economic levels of countries improve, the scores would tend to shift towards the right. But again, it is relative, right? If India is shifting, and again US is also going to shift, right? So that is why we say that it's a relative score and it's not an absolute score. I hope that answers your question. And one other common question that I get is people who have lived in different countries. Let's say I am here, I relocate to the US. How does some of my cultural traits change? At least based on this research, the traits don't differ significantly, but of course the environment also shapes it to a great extent. But predominantly, it does not change to a great extent. Your root culture stays, is what at least this research says. And if there are any disagreements, feel free to raise. What conditions accelerate that? Yeah, what conditions accelerate? As I said, education, the economy of the country, and the earning capacity. A lot of those things would shape some of these shifts, or would kind of lead to some of these shifts.
How much time do they have
So,
in the
so
breakout?
good. Okay, I'll take this one last question. I think Rakshita has posted this question on gender role differentiation, masculinity versus femininity. So, as I said, this specifically femininity and masculinity, achievement orientation and quality of life was previously called as masculinity and femininity before, and it was renamed for obvious reasons, right? So that's the point. Okay, all right. We will give them 10 minutes for the discussion, Shanti.
Yeah, so opening the rooms at 7:18 will bring you back by 7:28:29. Enjoy the discussions. I'm opening the rooms now.
So Shanti, should I also join some of the rooms or?
If you want to go and just peep in, feel free to join any of the rooms.
Okay.
But yeah, you don't need to. I can make you the co-host so that you can join any of the rooms too. Make co-host, yeah? So now, if you wish to join and just peep in and listen into what other room
Sure,
is.
I will just do that.
Yeah, and in the meanwhile, I'll pause the recording so that silence is not recorded.
How do I? All right. So I know, was this time good enough? 10 minutes good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
All right.
no, I don't think it was enough for our team.
Okay.
Actually, it was a challenge opening the document.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Shamik. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, maybe can we have one person from each of the group uh, probably explain? I know there were questions, there was a scenario, and then the brief question, the responses that you discussed, right? Can we have maybe one person from each of the group to just brief us on the summary of the scenario, and then what was the discussion about, right? You can just go question by question and then address it if that's okay with all of you. Team one or breakout one? Can somebody? Anyone?
Scenario, team one. I'll read out the scenario.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
No, you can give a summary. Probably it's okay if you just want to give a high-level summary. That's okay.
The summary, the gist of that particular case is that, there are two teams working on a particular project for the last 1.5 years. Rahul is the team lead from the India perspective and Peter is from Denmark. So the project has to be completed in the last week of December. But in Denmark, what happens is, they are on leave. And Rahul has requested Peter for required support. But Peter says that, it's not possible because all of them are on leave. But it doesn't end over there. Rahul escalates it to the top management, but he doesn't get any response. So now Rahul is left wondering, what he could do in this situation, as there's no support from the Denmark team during this critical period.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what dimension would this fall under?
Yeah.
What was the consensus?
It was
Indulgence over achievement. I mean, that's what we felt.
Okay. So you mean time orient, meaning you mean to say achievement versus quality of life?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, Ramik. Okay, that's almost there. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And how would the perceptions be different between Rahul and Peter, and what could they think about each other? Any?
Yeah, Rahul might think, it's a very laid back approach by Peter. And Peter, what probably an assumption, what would be going in his running across his mind is, since it was last for 1.5 years, and he knew that very much that
Yes.
December we are off. So probably he could have been a little bit more proactive and ensuring that before the people go on leave, the project could have been, completed.
Okay. And given this situation, any proposals on both sides? How would you address this kind of a scenario? Any discussions around that? What would you have done differently?
So this is the so my I mean, because we have handled this multi location teams, plan better. Okay, because when you're working with the locations across the globe, you respect each other's space. Okay, if somebody is not coming on vacation, he's not coming. So we have to plan it better. And even if there was a date of completion, we could have actually discussed it and augmented it by another week or two, depending on the situation, because everybody in the team will respect that situation.
Sure.
Okay, and
Absolutely.
then not have any expectations which was not acceptable to both. Otherwise, thinking that they are not team, they don't belong to the team, or somebody is interfering in our personal space. Those questions could have been discussed earlier, because this is a 1.5 year old project, and you have
Yes,
already gone through this situation.
sure.
This is
So
what thought.
sure, absolutely. Thanks. Ajit. I think better planning, that is definitely one solution. Of course, since they've already passed this stage, what they did was apparently lot of these are real scenarios. So they picked one Indian who was there in Denmark and made him the Bakra work over the holidays, and these people in India worked through the project and got it done. Right. So that is how they kind of worked around this problem. So again, yes, understanding, be empathetic about other cultures. Of course, it's not about right or wrong. It is about the situation and how you could have addressed it better, right? Okay, thanks. Thanks, team one. Team two, can we just have some rep from team two, please?
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah, sure, Rohini.
Ours
Thanks.
was a scenario of Akshata from India and Mary from Germany, two project managers collaborating on a project. And they seem to have differences in their ways of working, where Mary wanted everything to be filled in a particular manner when it came to documentation and processes. And Akshata felt that there were times when this was unnecessary and no point having a standard template. You evolve as you go along, and those differences between them caused conflicts, which ultimately got escalated.
Mhm.
Our team felt that this was related to the certainty dimension, the difference between the need for certainty and the tolerance for
Absolutely.
ambiguity. And
Absolutely.
we felt that Mary saw Akshata as being more casual, indifferent to compliances, rules, documents, while Akshata found Mary more rigid,
Yeah.
not open to ideas. And our group felt that if they could have agreed on ways of working,
Mm-hmm.
when they started seeing these differences and started feeling uncomfortable, if they could kind of agree on ways of working where decide on which processes or documents can be non-negotiable,
Sure.
and therefore they adhere because there's some method in those processes or a purpose for them, so we adhere to them as pristine. But we also agree where we can kind of create or innovate those processes and create some bit of flexibility so that Akshata also feels that there is room to improvise. And we felt even though they escalated matters, there's an opportunity to say, how do we agree on these differences or resolve conflicts to more healthy conversations rather than just escalate?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Rohini. That was wonderful. So eventually what they ended up doing was something very similar. They just segregated it as P1, P2, and then they did all that fixed. And then P3, P4 were all things that were just, there were room for some kind of flexibility there, right? So that is how they kind of resolved the problem. Okay, team three. Can we have team three, someone, please?
Yeah, I can go through here.
Hi, Vijayashri, please.
So we had this case study on open that about an India team which owns a project which is currently in France, and for cost reasons they have to. The idea of the India team project head is to move it to Malaysia. Obvious reasons because of the costing. And Naren is trying to convince the Malaysia team leader, Mark, to take responsibility for the lab. Mark is requesting for additional funding, and Naren did not have any budgets. However, he is asking him to use the budgets from the recently cancelled projects.
Yes.
There is a negotiation that is going on. In the meantime, the French team gets impatient and they are very upset with Naren. So Naren is wondering how he can convince Mark to get into the project. So this is the scenario. What we brought out, where there was a certainty versus tolerance for ambiguity that was playing out, because looks like Mark was like Naren was like, take the scenario quickly, handle it. He was expecting agility there, and Mark was pushing out. because he was not too sure how he's going to handle it. So there was a lot of assumptions we put there, saying that Mark is from Malaysia. Mark could be anywhere. We didn't know, but we assumed that he is from Malaysia. And yeah, so with that in mind, we just said there is a certainty and tolerance for ambiguity that comes to play. Achievement and ability of time life orientation that came to play, long term versus short term that came to play, and indulgence and restraint to some extent that came to play, right? Because there was because Mark would consider Naren to be very insensitive, not understanding his scenario, not empathetical, compassionate, and trying to get the job done. Whereas Naren will assume that Mark is like not agile, not quick, not turning around. He's pessimistic, is guarded, even unconcerned to a large extent, and lacking ambition and afraid of conflict, all that. So this is what we came to, and we didn't move to the next phase.
So this is a tricky one. The reason is because, of course, I'm purview to the solution. I'm a little, I know the dimension kind of very closely. But of course, when you see this as from a very fresh perspective, it could fall into any of these buckets, right? So eventually how we solved it was Malaysia's hierarchical orientation is even worse than Japan, meaning they are the highest in the world when it comes to hierarchical orientation. So eventually what was done is somebody from the US just picked the stick and said, hey, get it done. And that's it. It was all done.
Because we did not have information on whether the resource available was the right fit for this project that he is pushing or not. So a lot of ambiguity was there. We put in a lot of assumptions and we closed it.
Yeah, that is one. And yeah, of course, taking the stick, somebody taking the stick and then saying, hey, get it done is one way. And especially with Malaysia, they also go a long way with relationships. So just if, let's say, if Naren is able to make a visit to Penang or whatever Malaysia site it is, and then go have a lunch conversation, it's much easier. That could also have been done. But in this case, it just worked the other way.
So Mark was Malaysian or not?
Sorry?
Mark was a Malaysian or?
Mark was a Malaysian, yes.
Malaysian? So we were right there. Okay.
Yes. Okay, thanks. All right. Team 4, can we just have team 4, please?
See, nobody's volunteering from team 4X. Okay, I'll quickly talk about it. So I think I've forgotten the names of the people involved.
Yeah, Akshay, if you want help, Akshay and Mike.
Yeah, Akshay and Mike. So Akshay was, I'm sorry, I can't read the case. I'm just going to give a
No, you can just summarize. That's okay.
So Akshay was working on some tape out. Is that the correct terminology?
Yeah, sure.
And he kept asking for certain information from Mark, I think, and then Mark didn't respond. And then at the last minute, Mark, kind of 3 days before the tape out is due, he says that it's failing on these quality parameters, so we cannot go ahead with this particular tape out. And Akshay is worried that this is going to reflect badly on his performance. And even though he kept checking with Mark on the quality parameters, Mark only responded last minute. I hope I've got that right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So what was your...
We felt there were two parameters at play, two dimensions at play. One was, and perhaps even a third dimension. One was certainty. There was I think Akshay had a need for certainty, even though India is more on the tolerance for ambiguity side. And Mark was, not really providing those details. And we also feel there was some power distance at play because Akshay was worried about how he can approach Mark and be a little more assertive with what he needs. And perhaps some individualism as well, if I'm...
Yes.
Yeah, which is that there is... Akshay is probably wants to be more collaborative, whereas Mark is quite individualistic in his approach.
Yeah. So any proposals from your side on how this could have been handled?
Well, mainly communication. We felt that Akshay needs to reach out to Mark and set expectations from both sides, and even ask Mark, how does he expect this to be dealt with in the beginning, not at the end. It should have
Yes.
been done right from the start. And of course, you should have also stood up to Mark a little bit and, just said that, look, we can't work this way. This is how it's got to be. But because he might be worried about hierarchy, he may not have
Yes.
taken a assertive stance.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the rest of the group, please add if I've missed anything.
Yeah, this is also again a combination of definitely dimensions, power distance coming in, individualism coming in, Mike coming from the US, and then Akshay from India. It's a lot of, again, a lot of the scenarios that you encounter, it's not just one dimension, right? It could be multiple aspects, and the solution could come from one angle, but eventually it is a combination of dimensions, right? Eventually, this was a firefighting, and somehow we scraped it through, but yeah, it was a hard one. Meaning, it was escalated and it was a little nasty, I should say. Okay, all right. Yeah, better planning, of course, in terms of expectations, right? I think, especially Indians, we are a little vague to start with until we get to the flow. As we are clear at the beginning, from the beginning, it is much better, right? Because when there is a deadline that is being asked, we are a little tentative to start with, and then we kind of go, right? So, how do you really nail it down at the beginning, then towards the end would probably help. Okay, all right. Team 6.
Five.
Sorry, 5. Oh,
Five.
sorry. 5. Team 5. I'm just watching the time. Yeah, we have
I
some time.
could go very quickly, I think, in
Yeah,
the
Tushima, please.
time, if
Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah. So
yeah, please.
we had a full house. I hope I don't miss anyone. Rakshit, Sujit, Lata, Kavita, Brian. Who else in team 5? Sorry if I
So,
forget.
no, that's okay.
Okay.
You
Okay.
just summarize
So,
the case and then.
yeah. So at first we couldn't find the case, and then sort of Brian rescued us and
Okay.
shared the screen, so we were all able to read through it quickly. So this is the story of these two gentlemen, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Anrej. I hope
Yes.
I'm pronouncing it right. So Mr. Anderson is reporting to Mr. Anrej and is being entrusted with the responsibility of really the next level of growth in Eastern Europe. Mr. Anderson expresses a lot of enthusiasm and optimism and says that he's really looking forward to working on this. And Mr. Andrich tells him that, when you meet the team, you have to be really very restrained and serious so that you show how capable you are, and you need to prove your credibility with this team. So Mr. Anderson is very taken aback with this. And he says that, it's very important to have a positive attitude. That's the most important thing. And when the meeting ends, they both sort of walk away, and both of them are now very apprehensive about the situation, wondering if it's going to work. And of course, we had a list of very thoughtfully curated questions of, what is really happening here? What are the issues? What do they dislike about each other and like about each other, and so on. And we had to identify the dimensions. Now, one of the dimensions is indulgence versus restraint. And
Yeah, absolutely.
we were a very indulgent group.
Yes.
Because we identified all the dimensions to begin with.
Okay.
Okay. So we sort of really got under the skin of these two characters. And basically, we identified that possibly one was looking at higher levels of professionalism and therefore restraint. And the other one was looking at building good relationships and therefore indulgence, and how important it is to get off to a warm, positive start. We also identified long-term versus short-term orientation. Is looking at the long-term success of the project. The other is only looking at the short-term quick fix. We definitely identified possibly power distance, where the boss may have felt that his subordinate is not really taking what he's saying seriously enough, and uncertainty avoidance as well. Yeah, but basically our surmise was that one is more focused on professionalism, and the subordinate probably feels that the boss is a damn squib because He's not
Absolutely.
picking up on the enthusiasm at all. And if I've
Yeah.
missed out anything, I'll request the team members to please fill
So
it with.
I think bang on. You kind of summarized it very nicely. Thanks, Tushima. So it is a more of an indulgent, restrained. Eastern European countries are slightly restrained, just to a great extent, like the Asian countries. And Anderson, coming from the West, is more indulgent by nature. So he was kind of taken aback when he said, "Hey, you have to be serious. You have to be professional." All these
Yeah.
things. He was taken a little bit back, and then slowly, as he got immersed into the culture and all that, he understood that, hey, there are some tweaks that he has to make to his style to really make this really work. So Mr. Anderson had to actually, kind of adjust to the culture to a great extent, and they made it work. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Tushima. Can we move on to the team 6, please?
Yes, I can on behalf
Sure.
of
Thanks,
Team 6.
Amlesh.
Amlesh, yeah. Yeah, so we had this interesting case where this Japanese company, and we had Mr. Kobayashi and Mr. Bob, an American manager there. So these two are there in the case, and Mr. Kobayashi wants Mr. Bob to meet customers and look at the use cases and have some more details, and then take those inputs forward, and possibly development of the products and so on and so forth. While Mr. Bob is suggesting that I would rather go for that product development workshop, which is going to deliver in 3 years time. And of course many other details were there. And since we are talking about an American manager and a Japanese, head of an organization or something like that,
Amlesh,
so you can
Amlesh,
see the
sorry. It was the other
cultural.
way around. It was the other way around. Japanese boss and the American quality engineer.
A Japanese boss and an American,
That is
and
what
the
I was
American.
saying. That is what I was saying.
Yeah,
Japanese.
you're right. The only thing is, the project was more. The American was interested in the short-term project, and the manager was more interested in the long-term project.
Yeah. So time dimension was the number one,
Absolutely.
that even though the American talked about 3 years, but from Japanese standards, possibility short term
3
or even
years.
mid term possibly. And that
Absolutely.
was one clear. We also looked at, there are many other dimensions. I was just saying that
Yes.
there are many other dimensions were at play. We are talking about America and
Hierarchy.
Japan, right?
Yes,
On many
hierarchy.
cultural aspects, they will be at two ends possibly. One more which was there, that certainty, there is a fixed product which is already possibly designed and defined, and you are going into a workshop to take it forward. While on the other hand, you are inviting some more details, which means
Definitely.
that will have an element of ambiguity also there. So, and of course, how to go about is cultural sensitization, I think, is something that need to be, that's an, of course, organization level intervention. But of course, we also talk that maybe they can hire some good coaches who are
Sure,
coached
absolutely.
individually and then maybe collectively, and make them understand each other's perspectives and sensitivities, and so the organization can move forward.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amlesh. So I just saw somebody ask whether there is an assessment. I am just getting right there in the interest of time. Okay. Are you able to see my screen? Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So now let me get to CWQ. So that is exactly the assessment that you were asking. So it is not a personality test. It measures individual cultural preferences, and it helps others learn about the differences in cultural preferences. It is not just about, like any personality assessment you take, you get something that is for you. It's a relative score with respect to you, other cultures, and also other team members, etc. Right? And it provides greater understanding of personal attitudes towards work. So I'll just show you some dashboards so that you exactly know how it looks like, right? Instead of telling what it is. So this is how the individual score looks like, right? You will, to the left here, you see what you see, individualism. For a single dimension, you will get a report that compares, you can choose 5 countries that you work with. Peter Forbes is the person who took the survey, and his score is 34. And you can see that he works with US, Australia, India, Thailand, Singapore. And the scores for those countries, average scores for those countries are here. And also you can see that in summary, if you look at it, your Hofstede questionnaire results is basically this gives the score of that particular individual across all these dimensions. Okay, so this will tell you the right hand, the one here, it is about just your own scores where you stand. The left is your score for that particular dimension. Again, the same in the report, you will get the same one for all the dimensions. Okay, this is one kind of individual report. And if you want a team level report, let's say you want a team to basically take this particular survey, you kind of get some things like this, right? So these are all the different participants. We've just masked the names here. These are all the different names and then the respective scores. And you clearly know who stands where with respect to each of these dimensions and how what kind of conflicts as a manager. Just by seeing this dashboard, you can see where conflicts are natural, right? Where can conflicts occur, right? So this is another team kind of a report. I think the most important one is that, of course, this is also an individual report for particular dimensions, right? Whatever you're seeing here, it's the chart just translates that. So the next thing is, this is the most important one, right? So the intersection, as each one of you brought in these particular case studies, what we went through, scenarios, what we went through, it is not just about one dimension, right? A lot of times, multiple dimensions together are there, and we have to recognize that, and we have to apply the solutions accordingly, right? So now, how a person makes a decision will be a combination of power, distance, and individualism. How is the change approach is decided by a combination of certainty and individualism. Social interaction is achievement and individualism. So like this, there are 15 dashboards that can be generated from this based on which the intersection of two dimensions, right? So these are the 15 dimensions overall. I'll just show you some sample dashboards, not all of them I have. I just picked a few here. So here, for example, this is a leadership dimension. So achievement versus power distance. This is a combination of achievement and power distance. You see that there are these 4 boxes: managing by authority, balance focus; managing by authority, job focus; managing by example, job focus; managing by example, balance focus. Right. So this essentially all these A, B, C, D, E are the different individuals that took the survey, and the countries here are the different countries where the average for each of these countries stand. Right. So now you can see that there is going to be definitely a conflict between A and H, E and C, right? So like that you can figure out. And for all you know, these people's leadership styles may just have it is all more or less very, very similar, right? So what happens is that when a leader chooses somebody, typically they want them to be like themselves, and then they just pick leaders who are very similar, who lead by similar style, right? So that is how this is. Just to show, maybe I'll just change approach. So change approach is a combination of individualism and certainty. So you can see how all these different individuals stand and how India as a country where it stands. And then how these dashboards basically tell, hey, if you have to work with somebody in, let's say, Singapore, how do you really, you have to kind of force change into that person. So you can decide your change strategy based on the individual and based on the culture that you actually work with, right? So similarly, we have many such how decisions are being made, whether it is autonomous, bureaucracy. So that's why I think I was mentioning about family model, right? You see that to a great extent, a lot of the Asian countries, you will see that they operate in a family model. What a family model means is, hey, no, I listen to everybody and eventually I do what I want, right? That is a family model. And then autonomy is all about Germany, US. It's all about, hey, they have the freedom to make, they listen, and then it's all theirs, the style, right? They want more freedom to make those decisions. And then multi-level consultation is about group orientation and participant orientation together, and that is how they make their decisions, right? So these are the different dashboards that are there. I will just before maybe I'll just take some questions. I just want to summarize, right? The summary, I just want to leave you with these questions, right? Rather than a lot of answers, I just want to leave you with these questions. How often has cultural understanding or misunderstanding come your way, right? Come in your way of being an effective coach. A lot of times, the Japanese person that I spoke, whom I was coaching, I had very limited idea of how Japanese really worked, right? At that time, for me, it was a handicap. I couldn't really handle that at that point in time. It took a while. So how does this understanding or misunderstanding come in your way of coaching, right? This is one question to ponder upon. And how often you've been colored by your own cultural preferences. And I use this example very, very often. For me, especially the way I have been brought up, somebody who smokes and who drinks are all bad, right? So that is how I was brought up. So when I am talking to somebody who says that, hey, I just have to go for a smoke, I think, what is this guy? So for me to get out of that, it took quite a long time as I went through the coaching sessions. It took the first 100 hours of coaching. I feel now why they have all these levels, right? ACC, MCC. The first 100 hours was just getting rid of all these things that are built into me as a coach, right? And then how can you really use this knowledge to resolve conflicts in organizations as well as your own coaching conversations, right? So that's what I want you to kind of reflect upon. Eventually, our goal as coaches should be to see things as they are instead of seeing things as we are, right? So that's what I want to leave you all with. Okay, thank you. I hope. Yeah, I have 1 more minute. I can take some questions. I can stay for some more time. No problem.
Lovely session, Lakshmi. I can see lots of excitement in the chat. I will formally close the session and let people stay on for any questions that they may have. So
Sure.
thank you so much, people, for staying on. If you've stayed until now, you will still get this ECO. So don't worry if you have to jump onto another call. Totally understand. But those of you who have questions for Lakshmi, please unmute and ask.
I will just stop sharing and then.
Question by Rakshit, which is quite an interesting question, sent at 1949 hours.
Okay.
Would you be able to see that? It's quite an interesting one. The dimensions, breadth versus depth, for example. Yeah, so.
Okay. Rakshit, okay, I have a question. Breadth versus depth, for example, I have observed in populations in transition. Dimensions in the same population as a coach working in these. Help to be objective and not fall into judgment trap. Yeah. So I think that is the question that I kind of put in at the last, right? Meaning a lot of times, if let's say we get into a judgment mode because we know something, that is also risky, but it is good to have this in the back of our mind rather than just falling into the trap, right? I think that's a very important question, and I was also thinking through this, right? When we as coaches, we have to be as non-judgmental as possible, but actually some of our questions, if we know the nuances of the culture, it could be very, very powerful, right? It is just about our own observations, meaning even in the latest markers, there's also modifications around intuition and observations, right? So that is very, very powerful, right? You have some intuition about that culture. It is good to bring that out rather than being in judgment. Maybe that is going to help the coach, right? That is going to be very useful. That's my view.
Yeah, and also just the point is that if we can, I know we have those intuitions because we've read about it, etc. If we can keep that aside and see and observe whether those play out in the coaching sessions, if some
Yes,
of them, in
absolutely.
terms of the tasks that they do or whatever, little things like do they delay stuff, whatever they're supposed to do, etc. So yeah.
Absolutely. So it is being detached but attached, right? So that is how I would put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Any other questions?
I don't see any question. There's a comment. Lalna, you want to share?
Yeah,
The
no,
When
I
we
was just
talk about
saying.
geographical distinctions, are we generalizing? Generalizing, how do we look at subcultures within the larger culture, which may inherit some parameters, but also has. Absolutely. I think this is very relevant, especially for a country like India, right? We easily label, North Indians are like these, South Indians are like these. That definitely plays a role. Again, that awareness, again, the only challenge, again, goes back to the previous question. The moment you start labeling as a coach, that becomes a little tricky, right? So that is where I feel first comes detachment, because you have your own perceptions about the culture. So stay detached. But if there are specific observations, bring it out in the form of behaviors rather than labeling, right? Hey, this particular behavior I observed. What do you think about it? So questions like that can be a little bit can bring out whether what you are really thinking is true or not. Rather than labeling, it's good to bring out the behavioral aspect of that. Okay, any reference to the book? I have this book. So this is the book. Okay, so this is the book. I will just put it in the chat window as well. It's called Cultures and Organizations, Software of the Mind. The title is also the same. I'll just put it in the...
Lakshmi, can I go ahead?
Sure, please, Biswajit, please.
Yes, so so this book that is written is about culture and organization, and organization's culture actually it is impacted by the culture of that country. Okay, so when I was in London for 3 to 4 months on a project where I was able to navigate myself within the organization. Like I'm a keen observer, so I used to observe how people behave and what is accepted, what is not accepted. But even outside the organization, when we meet the same people, like on a Wednesday, we used to go for a drink. Okay, everybody go for a drink, and there are some unsaid etiquettes. Okay, they never mentioned that anywhere, but there's an unsaid etiquette. Like when they take out for a drink, you're not supposed to order for something which others are not ordering. Okay, isn't it? So like I don't drink beer. Okay, so I opted for something else. And they were just looking at it as if I have come from moon or some other orbit. And that is where I felt it was more difficult to adjust rather than in the office, because that is where you are more protected. But outside, that protection goes off. And that is where I found it a little difficult. Now, in coaching sense, okay, bring that perspective to coaching. How do you ask questions pertaining to that? Like,
so that is exactly pertaining to the previous question that Lalana was asking, right? So when you have those observations, abstracting, meaning even though you may have an intuition that this could be related to the culture, how can you basically bring out a behavior associated with this person and then dig deeper on that? Hey, this is what, like, for example, this is what I observe in you. Is this something that resonates with your culture, or is it something that is something like that, right? So those kind of questions can bring out what you are thinking during a coaching conversation.
Okay. Thank you. I think this session is very, very, very powerful, very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Biswajit. Okay, thank you all. Any other questions, Shanti?
Comments, questions? Lana, you want to share what you had put in?
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I think this is very useful, the country culture aspect.
National cultures,
yeah. But if you do want to go to an organizational level, there are some models presented by Robbins and Coulter on organizational culture. They have 7 parameters. And and I think both Shanti and I have attended a session in the TA group, which was like a TA model for diagnosing culture. So just thought I'd put it out there if anyone wants to pick it up. But thanks, Lakshmi. This was really, really useful. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you. Many of you in the session day after tomorrow. It's on team coaching. It's a session by the team coaching COP. And next month, we will come back to you with more sessions. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Amlesh. Thank you.
Thank you so much.